My partner insulted my appearance in front of his colleagues and ended our relationship at a fancy restaurant, sticking me with the entire check. As he departed, he shouted that someone like me should feel lucky he even bothered dating me. I kept my composure and remained patient. Today, my phone exploded with 13 unanswered calls. I'm still trying to process last weekend's events. The memory keeps cycling through my thoughts, making me question whether I dreamed the entire ordeal. Sadly, my depleted bank account and chocolate stains across my furniture prove it absolutely occurred. For background, Marcus and I had been a couple for 2 full years. This wasn't some brief romance. We'd developed our patterns, weekend movie binges, uncomfortable family celebrations, and that strange partner meditation class he forced us to attempt. We were both hopeless. Our relationship had flaws. Doesn't every relationship? But I believed we were stable. We'd even discussed potentially sharing an apartment. Come summer, he possessed these irritating tendencies, abandoning his clothing everywhere, scrolling during films, and offering unwanted observations about my looks. Remarks like that blouse emphasizes your midsection, or have you considered changing your hair color? I dismissed these as his version of honesty. Former me was incredibly gullible. Last Friday, Marcus messaged about dinner with office colleagues. He'd never brought me into his professional circle, claiming it seemed unprofessional. So I felt genuinely excited. I splurged on new clothing, farewell, savings, and spent hours preparing. I'm talking complete online beauty guides, expensive styling tools reserved for special occasions, everything. I arrive at this costly downtown establishment, the type with microscopic servings and menus lacking prices. Red flag number 1. Marcus sat with 2 coworkers, Leonard and Pablo. The atmosphere felt immediately strange. Marcus barely greeted me, offering just a partial rise and muttering, "You're behind." I was exactly 2 minutes delayed due to parking difficulties. I settled down, and he examined my outfit, announcing loudly, "Oh, you selected that." His colleagues shared a meaningful glance while my cheeks burned. I wore a navy dress I considered attractive, nothing wild or unsuitable. I attempted humor. Did I miss some clothing requirements? He simply shrugged, mentioning they'd already requested starters. Wonderful. The following hour involved Marcus discussing work topics beyond my comprehension while his friends nodded along. Every time I attempted participating, Marcus either interrupted or corrected my statements. When I shared something about a client from my workplace, Marcus cut in with, "She doesn't understand real business operations." Dismissing my retail management experience with a wave, I grew increasingly uncomfortable, wondering if Marcus had always been this patronizing or if he was performing for his audience. Neither option looked appealing. Leonard inquired about our meeting story. I began explaining how his colleague Sarah, my closest friend, introduced us. Marcus interrupted mid-sentence. "Yeah," Sarah pitied her. "I was basically doing charity work," then chuckled. My heart sank completely. That wasn't remotely accurate. Sarah had actually cautioned me about Marcus's arrogance beforehand, but insisted he was decent underneath. Spoiler, he wasn't. I excused myself to the restroom, mainly to avoid tears in front of them. While hiding in the stall texting Sarah about this disaster, I received a notification showing Marcus had posted his location on social media with guys, evening out as if I didn't exist. Sarah immediately called, but I declined since I couldn't risk the men hearing me break down. I splashed water on my face, touched up my makeup, and gave myself a pathetic mirror pep talk about surviving dinner gracefully. Returning to the table, they were all chuckling about something but stopped abruptly when I appeared. Perfect. The server delivered our entrees, and Marcus continued mocking my meal selection. I'd chosen pasta among the cheaper options since I worried about expenses, and he kept commenting, "Preparing for a race. And that's ambitious for someone with your figure." Each remark stung like tiny cuts, accumulating rapidly. I barely touched my food, just moving it around while counting minutes until escape. Then Pablo asked Marcus about some presentation, and Marcus launched into this elaborate tale about his supervisor loving his concepts and him essentially leading the entire project. Something clicked in my mind. The previous week, Marcus had stressed about this same presentation, saying his part was only 5 minutes and he felt anxious. Now suddenly he's the hero. He seemed to inhabit some fantasy where he starred. When the check arrived, the server placed it centrally. Marcus grabbed it, glanced briefly, then pushed it toward me. I assumed he was showing me the total, but then he declared, and I'll never forget these words, "You know what? I don't think this is working." I stared, expecting the joke. There wasn't one. "I've been attempting to make this work, but I'm just not attracted to you anymore. I think we should end this." In a restaurant. before his friends. After 2 years together, who behaves like this? I was completely shocked. Are you serious? This is how you want to handle this? He stood, grabbed his coat, and said, I still feel sick remembering a girl like you. Should be grateful I even dated you this long. You're not exactly a prize. Then he and his friends simply departed. They all walked out together, laughing, leaving me with a $347 bill for their expensive appetizers and cocktails. The server approached with such a pitying expression that everything became infinitely worse. I paid with my credit card still, paying it off from the holidays. Joy and somehow reached my car without completely collapsing. I called Sarah from the parking lot, sobbing so intensely she couldn't understand me initially. She came straight over with ice cream and wine, the real hero. Between ugly crying and stress-eating cookie dough, I recounted everything. She was furious I had to prevent her from driving to Marcus's place for confrontation. That's when she became strange, asking questions about Marcus's work comments, the project he mentioned, his company role. Finally, she said, Jessica, I don't know how to tell you this, but Marcus isn't who he claims to be professionally. Turns out, Marcus isn't some rising marketing executive about to get promoted. He's an assistant who fetches coffee and arranges meetings. All those business trips, complete lies. The big presentation, he was just creating slides for the actual team. The impressive LinkedIn title, total fabrication. I felt incredibly foolish. For 2 years, this person had been lying about essentially everything, and I never questioned it. What else had been false? That night after Sarah left, I went full investigator mode. I scrolled through our message history, our pictures, everything. So many inconsistencies I'd overlooked. Financial comments that didn't make sense. Times he claimed to work late, but his location showed him elsewhere. I couldn't sleep. Replaying that restaurant moment, how diminished he made me feel, how embarrassed I was. Around 3 a.m., I received a text from an unknown number. Hey, it's Tyler from Marcus's office. Sarah gave me your number. There's some stuff you should know. That's when things became really interesting. Asterisk, asterisk, first update. Asterisk, asterisk, thank you all for the incredible supportive responses to my previous post. I literally wept reading some of them, in the best way. Many of you requested an update. So here's what happened next in this absolutely bizarre situation. After learning from Tyler, Marcus's coworker, that my boyfriend of 2 years had essentially been living in his own fictional universe, I spent several days in that awful post-breakup haze. You know the feeling, alternating between crying into ice cream and angrily browsing old pictures, questioning if any of it was genuine. My place looked catastrophic. Dishes stacked up, laundry scattered, and roughly 7 empty delivery bags because cooking seemed impossible. The worst part was having moments where I'd think of something amusing to message Marcus, then remembering what occurred and feeling dumped again. My mind was trapped in a cycle of, did that really happen, and how did I miss this? I'd been avoiding social platforms because I knew Marcus would post something irritating. Wednesday morning, I finally checked Instagram. Sure enough, there was Marcus with a workout selfie captioned "Level Up. Know your worth." The nerve. I almost hurled my phone. Sarah visited that evening with food, finding me wrapped in my blanket like a miserable burrito. She's been incredible throughout this ordeal, ensuring I eat proper meals, listening to me repeat the same complaints, and never once saying I warned you, despite having suspicions about Marcus from the start while eating. Sarah showed me her messages with Tyler. Apparently they'd been communicating frequently, and he had information to share. According to Tyler, Marcus had been telling everyone at work that he dumped me because I was possessive and constantly discussing marriage. Excuse me, I wasn't the one who created a Pinterest board called Future Home Ideas. Yes, Marcus actually had one, which he claimed was research for some work project. Then Tyler revealed the real shocker. Marcus wasn't just lying about his job title. He was currently on probation for stealing credit for others' work and might actually lose his job soon. All those late nights working, he was desperately scrambling to correct his errors before anyone could discover them. Those work trips being complete fabrications, I was still trying to wrap my head around everything when my cell phone started ringing. It was Tina, Ryan's mother. I hesitated before picking up, knowing this would be uncomfortable, but decided I needed to handle this maturely. Tina has consistently been incredibly kind to me, the type of person who never forgets my birthday and genuinely inquires about what's happening in my life. Her voice carried worry as she questioned whether Ryan and I were having problems. According to her, he had mentioned to the family that we'd experienced a minor disagreement, but assured everyone things were perfectly fine between us. A minor disagreement? This man had completely embarrassed me in public, ended our relationship in front of his friends, and left me responsible for an enormous restaurant bill. I attempted to stay non-committal, explaining that we were giving each other some breathing room because I didn't want to involve her in our personal drama. Then she brought up Ryan's birthday celebration scheduled for Saturday evening and mentioned how excited the entire family was to have me join them. Everyone? I practically choked on my tea. Ryan had convinced his family that our relationship was intact and that I would definitely be attending his birthday gathering. The celebration was planned for his parents' home, and apparently he had informed them that we would be sharing some significant announcement with everyone. After ending the call, I remained seated in complete disbelief while Vanessa stared at me as if I had suddenly sprouted another head. She questioned whether he was completely delusional or simply a compulsive liar. Honestly, I was questioning the exact same thing. That's exactly when we developed our strategy. I refused to simply disappear on his family members. They had consistently treated me with kindness and deserved to understand what type of person Ryan truly was. However, I also had no intention of creating drama or acting vengefully. I would simply show up to the dinner as requested and allow the reality to reveal itself organically. The following day, Cody arranged to meet me for coffee. This felt somewhat uncomfortable since our only connection was through Ryan, but he proved to be genuinely relaxed and easy to talk with. He verified everything I suspected and provided additional information about Ryan's workplace deceptions. The team Ryan claimed to manage consisted only of himself and 2 college interns. That major presentation he supposedly led last month, he was merely controlling the slideshow, while his supervisor delivered the actual presentation. Cody appeared genuinely disturbed on my behalf, mentioning that he had always found Ryan's stories about me suspicious. Apparently, Ryan would arrive at work complaining that I was demanding and difficult, when the reality was that I had been covering most of our restaurant bills recently because Ryan claimed to be waiting for his next paycheck. I now understood this probably meant he was simply irresponsible with his finances. During our conversation, Cody received a message from their supervisor requesting his assistance with an urgent project Saturday evening. Cody felt disappointed because he had existing plans. But then I suggested an idea. What if Cody needed to deliver something to Ryan's parents' residence during the birthday celebration? The timing would work perfectly. As we were organizing these details, my phone received a message from Ryan, the first communication since the restaurant catastrophe. It simply stated that we needed to discuss what had occurred and that he might have reacted too strongly. I showed Cody the message and he nearly choked on his coffee. Overreacting happens when someone gets irritated about tardiness, not when you publicly humiliate your girlfriend of 2 years and burden her with a $300 bill. I chose not to reply and let him wonder about my silence. The following 2 days became a whirlwind of preparation. I wasn't attending this dinner without being completely ready. I searched through previous text conversations, discovering all his deceptions, dates, when he claimed to be attending work conferences that never existed. Stories about colleagues that Cody confirmed were completely invented. Even photographs Ryan had shared of himself at company events that were actually just downloaded from the business website. Friday evening, Vanessa visited to help me select appropriate clothing. I won't deny that part of me wanted to arrive looking absolutely stunning just to irritate him, but we determined the most effective approach was to appear nice without seeming like I was making excessive effort. We chose a simple black dress that Ryan had once criticized, saying it made me look ordinary, which I now understand was his strange manipulation tactic because I always received compliments when wearing it. I barely managed any sleep Friday night. What if this strategy failed completely? What if his family supported him instead? What if I became paralyzed and couldn't follow through with the plan? By Saturday morning, I had bitten my fingernails down to nothing and mentally rehearsed approximately 17 different possible outcomes. Around midday, Ryan sent another message expressing his excitement about seeing me that evening and suggesting I wear something attractive because his parents were looking forward to my visit. I ignored that message as well, allowing him to assume whatever he preferred. I spent the afternoon preparing with a strange combination of anxiety and excitement. Vanessa assisted with my hair and provided encouragement when I started doubting myself. At 5:30, I climbed into my vehicle and drove toward his parents' residence. I had to stop once because my hands were trembling too severely to drive safely. I remained parked for several minutes, practicing those breathing techniques from that mindfulness application I had downloaded months earlier, but never actually utilized. What was I attempting to accomplish? Was this completely insane? Perhaps I should simply block Ryan from all communication and continue with my life like any reasonable person would. But then I imagined him sitting at his birthday celebration, probably fabricating some false version of our relationship, possibly even portraying himself as the injured party somehow. and my determination strengthened. I arrived at his parents' home at 6, deliberately late because I knew this would frustrate Ryan. Several vehicles were already parked in the driveway, indicating the entire family had gathered. I examined my makeup in the rearview mirror, took one final deep breath, and approached the entrance. Ryan's father answered with an enormous smile and warm embrace, welcoming me inside. The house carried the aroma of Tina's renowned pot roast, and for a moment I experienced a wave of melancholy. I genuinely cared about Ryan's family, and this would likely be my final opportunity to see them. I walked around the corner into the living area where Ryan stood, beverage in hand, laughing at something his cousin had said. He became completely motionless when he noticed me, obviously not anticipating my actual attendance despite what he had told his family. The expression on his face was absolutely priceless. For a brief moment, panic flickered across his features before he regained composure and approached with an artificial smile. He embraced me stiffly and whispered that he was surprised I actually came and that we needed to speak privately. I simply smiled and announced loudly enough for everyone to hear that I wouldn't miss his birthday celebration for anything, especially since he had been informing everyone that we had significant news to announce. The color completely disappeared from his face. Tina clapped her hands enthusiastically and questioned if this was what she suspected. Ryan's sister gave me a knowing glance, while his father began joking about finally becoming grandparents. Ryan gripped my elbow somewhat forcefully and attempted to guide me toward the hallway, but his mother announced that dinner was prepared and everyone needed to be seated. As we all gathered around the dining table with Ryan anxiously monitoring my every action, my phone received a message from Cody stating he was en route and would arrive in 15 minutes. Ryan leaned closer and whispered harshly, questioning what I was doing there and mentioning that, after the restaurant incident, he thought. I simply smiled pleasantly and announced loudly enough for everyone to hear that I wouldn't miss the opportunity to tell his family about what occurred at that restaurant, and that I was certain they would love to hear that particular story. The expression of complete terror on his face as his mother began serving the food made every second of anxiety worthwhile to reach this moment. The game was officially beginning. I'm finally prepared to tell you what went down at Ryan's birthday celebration. Sorry for taking so long to update. I needed some time to recover mentally from all this chaos. Plus, my internet connection has been terrible because my neighbor got hold of my Wi-Fi password and seems to have used up all the bandwidth. Downloading who knows what. Where did I stop last time? Oh, right. Me sitting at that dining room table with Ryan's entire family while he was having a complete meltdown about what I might reveal. So picture this. I'm surrounded by Ryan's whole clan. His mom and dad, Tina and Ralph. His sister, Kayla, his grandmother, and 2 cousins whose names I can never keep straight. The table was covered with Tina's incredible pot roast, these amazing buttery mashed potatoes that I seriously have dreams about, and some fancy salad that everyone would politely ignore, but pretend to enjoy. The first 20 minutes felt incredibly uncomfortable. Ryan kept attempting to steer every conversation while giving me these intense warning looks. I just kept smiling sweetly and offering people bread rolls, secretly enjoying how his left eye started twitching whenever I spoke. Was it petty? Absolutely. Was it satisfying? You bet. Tina, being the wonderful hostess she is, kept everyone talking. She asked the usual questions about my family and career. But when she mentioned how incredibly proud they all were of Ryan's recent promotion, I almost spit out my water. I looked over at Ryan, whose face had turned the exact color of those beets sitting on the table. Ryan immediately launched into this elaborate story about how his team was exceeding all their goals, and how his supervisor was basically preparing him for upper management. I just sat there nodding, watching him create an even bigger web of lies with every sentence. Ralph, who's typically the quiet one, suddenly brought up something called the Johnson account. Apparently, Ryan had been telling his father about this massive deal he was supposedly managing. Ryan's response was so incredibly vague, it could have been a fortune cookie message, something about strategic adjustments and maximizing core strengths. That meant absolutely nothing. His sister Kayla caught my attention from across the table. She's always been the family skeptic, the kind of person who fact-checks things during discussions and calls out nonsense when she hears it. She gave me this look like, "Are you hearing this garbage too?" That's when Tina started asking about our future plans. She wanted to know about our big announcement and whether it involved us taking things to the next level. Ryan practically fumbled his utensils and mumbled something about the timing not being appropriate for such discussions. His grandmother, who has absolutely no filter and is honestly my favorite member of his family, jumped right in asking if we were planning to move in together because Ryan had mentioned we were apartment hunting. This was completely news to me. The closest we'd ever come to that conversation was me suggesting We might want to share a streaming service subscription to cut costs. Ryan tried redirecting attention back to himself, bragging about how his supervisor had given him a corporate credit card for business-related expenses. I couldn't resist asking what kinds of purchases he was authorized to make. He stumbled through some nonsense about client meals and team activities. That's when I casually brought up our recent restaurant experience. Oh, speaking of dining out, Ryan treated me to this incredible place last week. What was it called again, sweetheart? The one where you met up with Leonard and Pablo? The blood drained from his face faster than my phone battery dies when I'm scrolling social media. Seriously, my phone can barely handle 20 minutes of apps before completely dying. Does anyone else have this problem? Before he could respond, the doorbell chimed. Perfect timing. Tina went to answer and I heard her excited voice saying, "Oh, Cody, what a wonderful surprise." Ryan looked like he might actually faint. Cody entered, carrying a manila folder, looking very professional in his dress shirt. He apologized for interrupting the birthday celebration, but explained he had some urgent work documents that Ryan needed to review and sign before Monday morning. Tina, being the gracious host she always is, immediately invited him to stay for dessert later. Ryan tried pushing Cody toward the exit, but Ralph insisted they could handle any work business right there since we were all family. Cody took the empty seat next to me, which I had definitely saved on purpose. Ryan was gripping his silverware so tightly, I thought he might actually break it. That's when Ralph asked Cody about the big presentation, the one Ryan had supposedly been in charge of. Cody looked puzzled for a moment before understanding the situation. He glanced at me, then at Ryan, and I could see him deciding what to do. Cody explained that the presentation had gone smoothly, but clarified that their supervisor had actually delivered it while Ryan and the rest of the team provided assistance. Ralph seemed confused and mentioned that wasn't how Ryan had described things. I decided to stir the pot a little more and asked Cody about Ryan's recent promotion. Poor Cody looked so uncomfortable, caught between being loyal to a colleague and not wanting to deceive an entire family. He fidgeted with his napkin and said something unclear about organizational changes. Ryan tried interrupting with this obviously fake laugh, attempting to change the topic to sports or whatever, but his sister wasn't buying it. She asked Cody directly what Ryan's actual job title was. The silence that followed was like that awful moment when you accidentally drop something in a public restroom. Everyone hears it, but nobody wants to acknowledge it happened. Cody looked at Ryan, who was silently begging with his eyes, then looked at me. I gave him a slight nod of encouragement. He cleared his throat and explained that Ryan worked as an administrative assistant in their marketing department. The quiet that followed was deafening. Ralph slowly set down his fork. His grandmother made this little sound. Kayla muttered something under her breath that definitely sounded like I knew it. Ryan immediately went into crisis management mode, claiming Cody was confused, that he had multiple responsibilities, that the situation was complicated, but the floodgates had opened. His family started asking specific questions he couldn't dodge. When exactly did this promotion happen? It hadn't. Why had he claimed to manage a team? He didn't. What about that corner office he'd mentioned? Also, completely fictional. With each question, Ryan's elaborate stories fell apart more and more. He kept glaring at me like this was somehow all my fault, which only made me more determined to let the truth come out completely. Tina, sweet as always, tried to smooth things over. She suggested we all have some birthday cake and focus on more positive topics. As she headed to the kitchen to get it, Kayla asked me directly about the restaurant incident I'd mentioned earlier. This was my opportunity. I took a deep breath and told them everything, how Ryan had invited me to meet his friends, how he had belittled me throughout the entire evening, how he broke up with me in front of everyone and abandoned me there with a $347 bill I could barely manage to pay. Ryan kept trying to interrupt, but his father silenced him with a look I'd never witnessed before, pure, complete disappointment. Ryan's defense was that I was exaggerating and playing the victim, that I had embarrassed him in front of his colleagues by not fitting in with them, and that sticking me with the bill was somehow teaching me about financial responsibility. His grandmother actually laughed out loud at that last excuse. Cody, who had remained quiet through most of this revelation, finally decided to speak up. He confirmed that Ryan had indeed been complaining about me at work, calling me high maintenance and difficult, when the reality was that I had been covering most of our date expenses because Ryan was always claiming to be short on money. The room fell completely silent again. You could have heard a pin drop. Ryan's family was processing everything they'd just learned about. who he really was versus the person he'd been pretending to be. Tina returned with the birthday cake, took one look at everyone's faces, and immediately understood that something major had happened while she was gone. The celebration had turned into something entirely different, a moment of truth that nobody had expected, but everyone needed to witness. Cody backed up everything I had said, mentioning that he'd overheard Ryan boasting to colleagues about how he'd shown me who was boss. He actually took out his cell phone and displayed messages from Pablo. Yes, actual evidence, everyone, where they discussed the entire incident. Tina returned carrying the birthday cake right as Ryan was attempting to portray himself as the wronged party. She placed it on the table and wondered what she had walked into. Nobody said anything for several seconds. Then Ryan's father spoke very softly, explaining that they needed to have a serious family conversation about truthfulness. Ryan absolutely lost his mind. Like a complete meltdown. He blamed me for poisoning his family against him, labeled Cody a backstabber, and claimed everyone was simply envious of his achievements. What achievements exactly? He knocked over his drinking glass, pointed directly at me, and shouted that someone like me should feel lucky he had even given me attention. His mother let out a shocked gasp. His grandmother muttered something that definitely sounded like elderly profanity. His sister simply shook her head as if she had expected this behavior all along. Somehow I managed to stay composed and replied that the only thing I felt thankful for was finally understanding his true character. Ryan charged out, slamming the door with such force that one of Tina's decorative dishes tumbled from the wall and shattered. The situation afterward felt strangely calm. Tina kept apologizing to me repeatedly. Ralph appeared exhausted and dejected. Kayla assisted with cleaning up the spilled liquid. Cody expressed regret for his role in the uncomfortable situation, but explained he couldn't remain silent while Ryan deceived everyone. Then something unexpected occurred. Instead of requesting that I leave, they urged me to remain for dessert. We all gathered there, Ryan's former girlfriend, his colleague, and his relatives, enjoying birthday cake without the guest of honor present. Under normal circumstances, this would have been incredibly uncomfortable, but surprisingly, it felt natural. Following dessert, I assisted Tina with kitchen cleanup. She continued expressing remorse and mentioned having no awareness of Ryan's extensive dishonesty. She appeared genuinely devastated, not only about his treatment of me, but about discovering who her child had become. I honestly felt sympathy for her. No parent wants to learn their offspring is fundamentally problematic. She quietly questioned whether there had been warning signs earlier, and I confessed that, in retrospect, there were concerning behaviors I had overlooked because I preferred believing the best about him. As I prepared to depart, Ryan's father approached me privately. He expressed gratitude for my honesty and apologized for his son's actions. He seemed so deflated, as if questioning where they had failed in his upbringing. I reassured him that Ryan's choices weren't their responsibility. He had made his own decisions. Cody volunteered to escort me to my vehicle, probably recognizing I needed time to absorb everything. During our walk down the driveway, he revealed that Ryan had been experiencing workplace difficulties for months, claiming others' ideas as his own, misrepresenting his contributions, even creating fraudulent client communications. He was actually facing his final warning before possible dismissal. Suddenly, Ryan's desperate desire to appear successful made disturbing sense. His entire identity depended on this fabricated image of achievement and importance. When I considered it from that perspective, I almost pitied him. Almost. I thanked Cody for supporting me and drove home, feeling emotionally drained yet relieved, like finally removing uncomfortable shoes after a long day. Sorry for this strange comparison, but you understand what I mean. Upon arriving home, I discovered 3 missed calls from Vanessa requesting updates. I was about to return her call when my phone received a message from Ryan. "You've destroyed everything. This isn't finished." I chose not to reply. Simply blocked his contact and prepared some tea. I should have felt frightened or disturbed, but honestly, I just felt weary and perhaps slightly proud of myself for confronting him. I assumed that concluded everything. I genuinely believed it was over. However, this morning my phone exploded with 13 missed calls from Ryan's mother, his sister, Cody, and several unknown numbers. Something significant had occurred overnight, and based on the increasingly desperate voicemails, Ryan had completely unraveled. Final update. I'm finally prepared to describe those 13 missed calls. Thanks for your patience while I worked through everything that transpired. Also, apologies for the delay. My computer decided to perform an unexpected 4-hour system update precisely when I sat down to write this. So where did I leave off? I awakened Sunday morning following the birthday celebration. catastrophe to discover my phone overwhelmed with calls from Ryan's relatives and Cody. Initially, I seriously thought someone had passed away or something similar. My stomach experienced that terrible sinking sensation as I reviewed the notifications: 5 missed calls from Tina, 3 from Kayla, 2 from Cody, and 3 from unrecognized numbers. I contacted Tina first since she appeared most concerned based on her voicemails, which were simply variations of "Sabrina, please contact me immediately." She answered on the initial ring, sounding completely exhausted. Apparently, after Ryan stormed from the birthday celebration, he had gone on a complete rampage. He had appeared at his former girlfriend's residence around 2 a.m., intoxicated and raving about how I had destroyed his existence. The ex-girlfriend, whose existence I was honestly unaware of, was understandably terrified and contacted Kayla, who had to retrieve him. But that wasn't everything. Ryan had also spent the evening sending deranged messages to virtually everyone in our social circle. He messaged Cody with threats about destroying his career. Good luck with that when you're facing termination yourself. He published this lengthy, incoherent social media post about being surrounded by betrayers and how people would regret crossing him. Most alarming was his decision to share my home address in a private message to his friend Pablo, stating he intended to make me suffer for embarrassing him. Pablo, who apparently possesses some ethical standards, immediately contacted Tina and forwarded the message, which explained her frantic attempts to reach me. I sat on my sofa wearing my worn-out sleepwear, hair still in yesterday's messy style, attempting to comprehend all this information while Tina apologized roughly 50 times for her son's conduct. I suppose I should have felt afraid, but honestly, I just felt drained, like when your phone remains at 1% battery for hours, simply waiting for it to finally shut down so you can recharge it and continue. Tina insisted on visiting just to ensure my safety, which was incredibly thoughtful but also triggered my panic cleaning mode. Nothing motivates household organization like knowing someone's mother is about to inspect your living space, right? I was literally shoving dirty clothes into my closet and scrubbing dried toothpaste from the bathroom sink when my doorbell chimed. It wasn't only Tina. Kayla accompanied her as well. They brought coffee and those delicious pastries from the bakery near their residence, which honestly might be what I'll miss most about dating Ryan. We gathered around my small kitchen table with the unsteady leg, and they filled me in on the complete scope of Ryan's overnight breakdown. I've been planning to repair for ages, and they updated me on Ryan's complete situation. Based on what Kayla shared, this wasn't Ryan's initial experience with fabricating his reality. During university, he had apparently convinced everyone he played on the baseball squad when he'd actually been eliminated during team selections. He had once bragged about dating a well-known student who had absolutely no clue about his existence. There was an entire history of him constructing this imaginary version of himself that was more accomplished, more admired, more everything. While they were explaining this, my phone continuously chimed with messages from acquaintances who had witnessed Ryan's online breakdown. Vanessa was panicking, wanting to visit with her boyfriend who practices martial arts, just for protection. She consumes way too many crime documentaries, I promise. My friend group was exploding with bewildered messages about the cryptic posts Ryan was publishing online. That's when my doorbell chimed once more. I completely froze, wondering if Ryan had arrived. Kayla glanced through the window coverings and exhaled deeply. It was Cody. Apparently Ryan had been bombarding his phone all morning as well, and Cody wanted to alert me personally since Ryan had mentioned planning to visit me. So there we all sat, myself, Ryan's mother, his sister, and his colleague, gathered in my living space on a Sunday morning, attempting to determine how to handle this grown man having a meltdown because he got exposed for his deceptions. If it wasn't so overwhelming, it would have been absurd. Like, picture trying to explain this scenario to someone who wasn't present. Cody mentioned that their supervisor had already learned about Ryan's social media outbursts. Someone had captured screenshots and shared them. So Monday at the office was going to be eventful. Kayla was concerned Ryan might do something reckless if he lost his employment on top of everything else. That's when my doorbell sounded again. This time, it was the building supervisor, looking extremely uncomfortable. Apparently, Ryan had been downstairs creating a disturbance in the entrance area, insisting to be allowed up to my unit. The supervisor had declined, bless him, and threatened to contact authorities, at which point Ryan had left angrily, but not before shouting that I was dishonest loud enough for the entire ground floor to overhear. Tina appeared crushed. She kept expressing regret and questioning where they had failed with him. I felt awful for her. Imagine discovering your grown child is essentially a walking warning sign. Kayla was more logical, suggesting I record everything in case. Ryan's conduct worsened. We were all sitting there attempting to decide our next move when my phone alerted me to a notification. Ryan had mentioned me in a social media story. Against my better judgment and everyone in the room advising me not to check, I opened it. It was a picture of me from early in our relationship, sleeping on his sofa with my mouth hanging open, with the caption, "Miss Perfect, who destroyed my birthday, isn't so perfect. Someone like you should feel lucky anyone photographed you at all." Like that was his grand revenge. A somewhat unflattering image from 2 years ago. I actually burst out laughing, which wasn't the response Tina was anticipating. But honestly, if that was his worst attempt, I was going to be perfectly fine. Just as we were planning our next actions, there was aggressive banging on my door. We all startled, then heard Ryan's voice, slightly slurred. "I know you're inside. Open up." Cody immediately rose like he was going to face Ryan, which was thoughtful but unnecessary. I was already contacting the building security officer benefits of a somewhat pricier apartment complex. Ryan continued banging and shouting, and I could hear my neighbor's door opening as she emerged to investigate the disturbance. By the time security arrived, Ryan had progressed to kicking the door. The security officer didn't hesitate. He instructed Ryan to depart or he would contact police. There was some exchange that I couldn't completely understand. Then quiet. The officer knocked softly and informed me Ryan had exited the building but remained in the parking area, possibly waiting. Tina was horrified. She insisted on going downstairs to handle her son personally, and honestly, I was relieved to let her. She was so distressed that Ralph, Ryan's father, had to come collect them both. The entire situation was simply depressing. After they departed, Cody and I sat on my sofa in shocked silence for a while. He finally interrupted it by asking if I had any alcohol, which seemed like the proper response to the morning we'd experienced. We shared a bottle of wine I'd been reserving for a special occasion, and this definitely qualified. By the time Cody left, it was late afternoon and I was emotionally drained. Vanessa visited and spent the night just in case Ryan decided to return. He didn't, thankfully. We ordered pizza, watched terrible reality television, and tried to process the absolute drama my life had become. The following weeks were quite an adjustment period. Ryan lost his employment after failing to appear for 3 days and sending inappropriate messages to multiple colleagues. He relocated back to his parents' home temporarily, which I only discovered because Kayla and I have maintained contact. She's actually quite wonderful. We meet for coffee occasionally. Ryan attempted to reach me several more times, leaving voicemails that varied from furious to emotional to strangely sentimental. I preserved them all as precaution but never replied. He established several fake social media accounts to message me, but they were so obviously him. Who else would write "You're making a big mistake with that spelling error?" that I simply blocked them immediately. The strangest incident was encountering him at a department store about a month later. I was in the household section examining shower curtains when suddenly there he was, holding a package of socks and appearing like he hadn't slept in weeks. We locked eyes, and for a moment I thought he might create a scene. Instead, he simply turned and walked away, abandoning his shopping cart right there in the aisle. That was 3 months ago now. Ryan eventually relocated to his uncle's residence in a different state. According to Tina, who still sends me holiday cards, which is sweet but awkward, his social media has become suspiciously silent. Kayla believes his parents finally stopped supporting him financially until he seeks counseling. As for myself, I'm doing quite well actually. My apartment finally feels like my own space again. Now that I've reorganized the furniture and replaced items that reminded me of Ryan, the most unexpected result of all this might be my surprising friendship with Cody. We're not romantically involved or anything, though Vanessa keeps attempting to arrange that, but we meet for lunch, sometimes in exchange messages about ridiculous social media videos. It's pleasant having someone who witnessed the entire Ryan drama and understands why I now have trust issues the size of a small country. Reflecting on everything, I'm not furious anymore. Well, not only furious, I'm also strangely thankful not for dating Ryan. Definitely not that, but for discovering his true character before things progressed further. Imagine if I had moved in with him or something worse. The thought makes me shudder that this whole experience taught me valuable lessons about recognizing red flags and trusting my instincts. When someone shows you who they really are through their actions, believe them the first time. Ryan's elaborate web of lies eventually collapsed under its own weight, and I'm grateful I wasn't buried underneath it when it fell. The support from his family, particularly Tina and Kayla, meant everything to me during this difficult time. It showed me that good people can come from complicated families. And that's sometimes the people who should know. Someone best are the most shocked by their behavior. I've also learned that standing up for yourself, even when it's uncomfortable or scary, is always worth it. That birthday dinner could have gone very differently if I had chosen to stay silent or simply disappeared from Ryan's life without explanation. Instead, I chose honesty and transparency. And while it created temporary chaos, it ultimately led to the truth coming out and justice being served. Now, when I look back on those 2 years with Ryan, I can see all the warning signs I missed or chose to ignore. The constant need for validation, the stories that never quite added up, the way he always had an excuse for everything. I'm wiser now, more cautious, but also more confident in my ability to recognize authentic people versus those who are simply performing a role.